All right. Hi, folks. Welcome back to the PagerDuty live stream. I'm Mandy Walls, developer advocate here at PagerDuty. With me today is Phil Leggetter, and we're going to be talking about Hookdeck. Phil, welcome to the show. Tell us a bit about yourself before we get rolling.
Hi, Mandy. Yeah, thanks for having me. What about me? So, my role at Hookdeck is head of developer relations, but we're a small team. So that means doing lots of things from kind of product work to hands-on engineering to kind of developer marketing. Obviously, having a background in software engineering, I deny that I'm a marketer. And I do like to think that the focus for me is more education. It's helping developers be successful through everything they do by building good products to sharing content that demonstrates the art of the possible with the technologies that I'm using at the time.
Awesome. Yeah, we're in marketing because marketing has budget. It's pragmatic that way. So yeah, awesome. So you've got some stuff to show us today. We can kick that off and talk all about what Hookdeck is and what it does. So I'm going to add your screen to the stage here.
Okay.
And off we go.
Okay, so I've hidden my screen, so I could maybe move it out to the side actually, so I can still see what's going on there. There we go. Okay, yeah, I've got better visibility now. So, this is our website. I don't have any slides. Hookdeck is something we're calling an event gateway. I guess another tagline other than receive, process, deliver messages across event-driven architecture is we provide tools and a platform for developers to build event-driven architectures, event-driven applications. What that means practically is we support a number of use cases, which we try to show on this kind of live diagram on the homepage. The most common use case for Hookdeck, or what we're calling event gateways, is to receive webhooks. So, webhooks are triggered by Shopify, Stripe, Twilio, PagerDuty, and received by the application that a developer is building. But reliably ingesting those events at scale can be quite tricky. So we found that providing infrastructure that reliably ingests events very quickly and then delivers them, effectively queues them, and then delivers them to a backend at the rate that backend can deal with, and also offering things like retries, transforms, filters, is a really valuable use case for organizations, and it's the most common use case for our platform. The next use case is to send webhooks, because effectively, if it's HTTP in to an endpoint and it's delivering an event over HTTP to another endpoint, you can also create something called connections within Hookdeck to deliver events. So you could use Hookdeck to build outbound webhooks into a SaaS or a developer platform. The third use case is very much like iPaaS, so integration platform as a service. Because you can ingest HTTP events from, say, a webhook provider, you can transform that payload and you can send that event, make an HTTP request to another provider. You can connect services, and you can also route events with filters and so on. So that's quite an interesting use case, and something I will show as part of the demo as well. This next one's quite unique, but surprisingly popular on our platform. There are a lot of kind of use cases where a lot of events are just generated, and there's a backend that needs to reliably ingest those events. So you need to authenticate those inbound events and then queue them and deliver them to a backend. Analytics is a good use case, a good example. Also kind of industrial IoT, where these devices are churning out a lot of events and you need something to ingest them. These could be SDKs or kind of user-driven events. So that's another use case we see quite a lot of. And then very generically, you can also use Hookdeck as a serverless queue, because it's HTTP in, we provide queuing functionality, routing functionality. So you can kind of build a serverless event-driven architecture between either third-party services or just individual microservices, and then use Hookdeck to ingest and reliably deliver and route those events. So those are the use cases. The next thing would probably be, I can demonstrate Hookdeck in action, if you like.
Awesome. Yeah,
cool. So I talked about connections, so we'll start by creating a connection. What I'm going to show is the kind of inbound webhook use case. So if I click connection, we've got this idea of sources, where the data is coming from, and destinations, where the data is going to. We support multiple kind of source types out the box, but ultimately, if anything's an HTTP request or a webhook, we can support it. So the direct platform doesn't need to be listed, because you can kind of go, okay, generic, it's an HTTP endpoint. But what I'll do here is, for simplicity, I'll go with Shopify. It's the number one platform used on our in Hookdeck.
Okay.
Because interesting enough, they support direct delivery to GCP, PubSub, and Amazon EventBridge. And then for HTTP, it's basically, you need to run your own queue, your ingestion services. You need to do filtering. So we provide quite a lot of value to developers on Shopify. So receiving events from Shopify, we're not really going to do this, but obviously if you were to do this, you would want to sign those requests. So within Hookdeck, when you create a source, the Hookdeck platform will authenticate or verify where those events have come from, providing you provide some authentication credentials. As I said, for this, I won't do that, but obviously in production, you would absolutely provide a Shopify secret. The next thing is a destination. Where's the event going to? So just for kind of like event capture, webhook capture, we've got a mock endpoint that you can ingest events. That's basically send events to. I'll just call that mock. There's a bunch of other options around that I'll kind of go into a little bit later. So what I'll do is this is an event coming from Shopify and delivered to this mock endpoint. So I'll create that. Then I've got this this URL. So each source will have a URL. If I jump into my terminal, and I'll show you the code for this. So this is just pretending to be a webhook. I've got a little script which is in TypeScript. There's a really big payload. So webhooks can be quite big payloads. Sometimes it can be small payloads, but this is a Shopify order created payload. And I'm just going to do a fetch request to this endpoint. This is just for testing purposes for this demo. But you can see it takes an argument of the URL, which I'll pass in, which is the source URL in Hookdeck. It'll then make a post request to it and send the JSON payload. So in here, if I do npm run Shopify trigger, I think I call my script. Let's hope. So that sends the event, and we can see the idea is Hookdeck will ingest those events. We actually use Cloudflare workers. We ingest those events really quickly. We push them on a queue, and that's obviously part of the infrastructure that we provide. So over here, you can see that on that endpoint, we've received that request. So that's come in. So now I can look at, we can talk a little bit about the terminology with it. You can see I've been testing. A little bit about the terminology within Hookdeck. We have the event coming in is a request. So it's an HTTP request to a source. Then within this connection, we've got source. This line is the connection, and there's the destination. You can actually have multiple destinations attached to a source. So for each connection that the source is connected to, we will generate from a request, we will generate an event over that connection. So that's if I go into events, we can see we've got this event, and then the delivery attempt to the destination is called an attempt. So we have requests, events that are generated, and then attempts. And here we can see the request that went out, which was the full Shopify payload, and the response from our mock endpoint, which actually just echoes back the result, which is quite useful, just to, I've got an event coming in, I just want to make sure I can receive it, what it looks like. So you can use us for that. So that's a very simple overview. The next is to, okay, well, right, I've proven that I've got my event coming in and I want to develop something locally. I've got an endpoint. So in here, I do have source, API, Shopify. Interesting enough, I saw that Guillermo and Lee from Vercel were talking about using Next.js as an API platform, an API framework. And I just did it because I thought it was easy. But it seems like, they're saying it has been built specifically as an API platform. Anyway, so the route here is /API/Shopify, and I've got route.js, which handles that, just replies with this. So if I want to run this locally, so most people will know of ngrok and similar tools. So we have a Hookdeck CLI, which is similar to ngrok, except we're not really trying to be a tunnel platform, right? Which ngrok is. We're just trying to build tooling to support that event, these asynchronous workflows, like consuming events from platforms. So what I'll do is, if I run my app, npm run dev, and then using the Hookdeck CLI, if I do Hookdeck listen, and it's port 3000, that my application's on, and then I can specify the source. So which Hookdeck source do I want to listen to? So Shopify, and then I actually want to provide a path because I know the event needs to go into /API /Shopify. So then we're listening on to that source. Now, if I go back to the dashboard, you'll see that this new connection has magically appeared. So not only are we routing events to this mock endpoint, we can also receive the events locally. So if I trigger that event again, or that mock inbound webhook, I can see the CLI logs that it's got 200 requests to, and then it's forwarded it to localhost 3000 /API /Shopify. And then you can see that my Next.js application has also received that event. So I can then go back into the dashboard. At the minute, we've got this differentiation between, say I go to events. If they're delivered to an HTTP destination or they're delivered to a CLI destination, you change this drop down. Now we're actually going to remove that, and it's actually just going to be a filter of like what is the destination type. And that's going live quite soon. Unfortunately, we're recording this before that's gone live. But you'll see on the CLI view, this event has been received, generated, and then delivered. And you can see we've got this hello from Hookdeck demo response. Now, just to prove this isn't made up, so I can save this updated text. And one of the nice things in this, and now I know Shopify has a trigger CLI command, Stripe has a trigger CLI command, but the webhook development experience is not consistent across. Not all webhook providers are the same. Not all of these platforms provide the same level of tooling. So what we can do is we can unify that experience. So you can be receiving events from Shopify, Stripe, PagerDuty, HubSpot, all of these multitude of providers, and get the same experience and centralized tooling to do that. So we can retry that. So in development, I made a change in code. Instead of having to send myself a text message to receive that Vonage or that Twilio SMS message, I can just retry it here. Now I know ngrok does that too, but it's a nice piece of functionality. So if I re-trigger that, we'll see it says pending, it's delivering. Hopefully my CLI is still connecting. Then you can see this was a manual trigger. And over here, we've now got a message which says in the PagerDuty demo. So you can iterate on changing your code and functionality and use that retry functionality. It's quite useful.
Nice.
So what did I want to show next? So we've got that local host development. We've got the replay functionality. Obviously, we're building something that we want to deploy. So if I now do Vercel prod, this is deploying to production. Excuse me. So what I'll do is now it's deployed to a public, Vercel application. If I go into connections, now what you probably would do in this scenario is you probably have different projects for your different environments. So you'd probably have a dev, a staging, and a prod, and any other environment that you kind of want. And that would be differentiated based on projects because they've got different credentials and so on. But just for this sake, it lets me add a prod endpoint. So I can say, I also want to create a connection using that Shopify source. I'm going to have an HTTP destination type. Now I can't remember what my, okay, that's deployed, which is great. So I can go into the Vercel dashboard. It's telling me what the public URL is. I'll go back into here. I'll call it Shopify prod. Set the destination URL and remember the path. Now, it's worthwhile saying that the path can be forwarded from the destination. So you might use the same Hookdeck source URL, Shopify, but then do / when you register those webhooks, do /orders /create, and we will forward on that path. There's an option in advanced configuration to support path forwarding. I'm not using that here, but that is, you don't have to have all these sources. You can just have one source. Since this is a public endpoint as well, Vercel is obviously massively scalable, but you could be running a PHP server in your bedroom and proxying events onto that. And the idea of this delivery rate is that the resource that you've allocated to ingest these events. volume it can deal with. So you can set a rate limit. So we queue the events and deliver them to your endpoints at the rate that you want. So let's say 20 per second seems that Vercel will easily be able to handle that. I mentioned ingesting events from all these different sources, Shopify, PagerDuty, anyone that produces an event. They've also got their own signatures, their own way of doing verification and authentication. Again, you can push that over to Hookdeck and set up the sources to manage that. And then on your endpoint, you only need to verify the Hookdeck signature. Did this event come from Hookdeck? So it unifies that authentication as well. I'm not going to do that here because I haven't written the code for it, although in all fairness, Copilot could probably do it within a minute. But I'm not doing that here. But obviously, absolutely, again, in production, you would verify that the events being received have been sent from Hookdeck.
Yeah.
I'll not look into it. We won't go into the rules. I'll save that. So I'll just close that for now. So we'll see, we've now got a Shopify prod endpoint. And again, if I trigger that event yet again, one thing to mention is I'm having to send the request in to generate events because this is a new connection. We don't yet have the ability to kind of fake a brand new request coming in, which I think probably would be quite useful in the future as well. So if I'm then going to make HTTP view, look at events, this is the event just received, and we'll see it has it? It should have generated 2. Oh no. Yes, it should have generated 2. Oh right, I'm in requests. Okay, sorry, requests. So the inbound requests, there are 2 connections associated with the Shopify source. You can see it's created 2 events, one to Shopify prod and one to mock. And then with the events, it generates an event on the different connections. So one to Shopify prod, one to mock. So that has been deployed. So it's now live. We're delivering events to our live Vercel endpoint, as well as our mock endpoint. And also if we jump into our CLI view, we're also delivering it to our CLI. It only delivers events to your CLI if it's connected. It doesn't try and deliver events if I haven't got my CLI running.
Oh, okay.
So the next, I talked about connecting events, and the reason I'm going to demonstrate this is really to just show transformations and filtering. I think they're quite useful because they allow for routing. They allow all different use cases that as developers will think up. So what I'm going to do here is for a Shopify event, I'm going to trigger an SMS to the customer and say, your order has been received. So again, with this, I'm going to use the Shopify source. I'm going to create a new destination type of HTTP and say this is going to be the Vonage. I used to work for Vonage, so which is why I have a preference. API. In the destination URL, this is the API endpoint. I'm going to have copied this from a little script that I've got down here. There we go. Let's copy that. One of the things I really like and I'm interested in exploring very much is using Hookdeck as an outbound queue to APIs for asynchronous kind of workflows. And the reason it's good is that, say you've got an API provider, and many every API provider has a rate limit, but you need to manage the fact if you go over that rate limit yourself, or you need to create this infrastructure that kind of pushes the API payload onto a queue, and then a worker that ingests those events at a timing period and then sends them out. But obviously with Hookdeck, you can just go, I'm going to push it onto a connection and set the rate limit for the same as the API that I'm hitting. So say 5 per second here. And I know I'm never going to get that 429 response. But also, actually, if you don't care, you could just hammer that API. And when we get a 429 response, we will retry it for you. So actually here, in retries, I can say I only really want to, exactly, with exponential backup. But you can also say, okay, well, 429s are the only time I want to retry these. So if I get a 400, some sort of other 400 error, I've made a mistake with my payload.
Yeah. So
we don't want to retry those sorts of things. Okay. So there's quite a lot of configuration here and options available. So back to authentication, obviously this endpoint this Vonage endpoint doesn't take a Hookdeck signature. It takes a bearer token or basic auth. Basic auth is a bit easier for me to set up. So if I go into the Vonage dashboard, I'm going to try not to give away various credentials as we do this. Great. So there's my API key, which I don't think is something I'm too worried about. So I'll set that as the user. So this is how their basic auth works. You can use your API key as your username, and the password is your secret. So make sure I don't click the eye icon. Save that there. So I'll show it failing, which is quite interesting. So now I've just got the Shopify payload hitting the Vonage API endpoint, which obviously won't work. But let's see what it does anyway. So that's come in. You can see we'll go into issues a little bit later and specifically demonstrate the PagerDuty integration with this. But if we look here, we've got a 422 response from the Vonage SMS API. So it's a badly formed payload because this Shopify payload is definitely not what the Vonage API wants to send a text message. So this is where, and that won't retry, remember, because we've only said only retry on 429s. So actually, I don't really want that icon to appear either. I don't even want to be tempted to click and retry sending that event. So we go back into connections. I can click on my connection between the Shopify event and Vonage, and I can use a transformation. I've got a pre-made one. If we're in the UK, that's a Blue Peter moment. And what this does here, we can see an example payload on the left. This is the payloads that we've received already, and I can go through some existing ones that have come in. And the transformation is just a handler. So we can change the body payload by assigning a value to the request.body. And here we've got the text. It's of type text. The channel is of type SMS. And the text is, hi, first name from the customer, your order, the order number has been received. We've got a 2 phone number, which actually isn't in here at the moment. But I'm aware that within this, it's very big. So within this customer, it's possible for a phone number to be there. And the from needs to be a Vonage registered phone number. So a number you've purchased through Vonage or Twilio if you're using Twilio as the provider. And you can store environmental variables within transformations. So this is the number that I've got. So they are encrypted, although we probably should hide the value in all fairness in this view. So now I've added that handler. I can actually check, I can run it. Okay, what's this going to do? So if I run that on those example payloads, I can see the body has been transformed into the SMS required payload, message type, text, and then the from. The 2 is missing, but I'll do that deliberately right now. So if I confirm and I save, that's great. The transformation's there. Now, again, if I trigger this event, now I expect this to fail, probably with a similar error. Now, is that the same one or is that different? No, that's a different one. What's happened there? See, the request came in. So the request has come in. We can see it's triggered 3 events, including one to the, is that twice? Yeah, so the past 2 have done that. So if I go to events, okay, it's done 422 again, because we can see that although payload's better, it's missing the 2 value. And actually the response from the Vonage API is very helpful. It tells me there's invalid parameters, 2 is missing and it's required. So 2 is required, but it's missing. So here's where we can use filters. So if we only want to hit that endpoint when the customer has provided, where Shopify has provided us with a customer phone number, I can use a filter. So in here, I'll say to property is required. So I'm using, I mean, there's a filter syntax. You've got to learn it and look up the docs. So obviously, these are the things that AI is really good at. I say that. Yep, that's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. So 2 must exist. Property 2 must exist. I can confirm that. I'll save that. And then if I trigger that event again, sorry for the repetition, what I should see now is it's actually in the requests view. In the request view, you might notice this is slightly different. So we're saying 2 have successfully been delivered, and we can see down here 1 has been filtered. So that one is just the one to the Vonage SMS API has been filtered out by the fact we've got the filter there. It's just said, no, this rule hasn't matched. I'm not going to create an event for that connection. So let's see so if I go into back to my code and the script, I've commented out my phone number. This is actually my phone number, so please don't spam me. And then if I trigger it this time, it's not going to be great showing my phone, but if I then trigger this same event, I will get a text message. As you see, you'll see I've been testing. But anyway, there is a new text message that just come in.
Yeah, there you go. Awesome.
Yeah. So that's that example. And the reason I think that's interesting is it's like an iPad, but there's a lot of flexibility. Sorry, someone's just knocking on my window. He's a delivery driver just knocking on my window. So yeah, provides a lot of flexibility and features that you can utilize to solve a lot of different use cases.
Yeah.
So I think that concludes really the overview. One of the things I would say is obviously this is very UI driven. We've spent a lot of time trying to create a good developer experience in the dashboard. But I mean, myself as well, I want to automate this. I don't want to have to go into the dashboard and manage this, especially if I'm ingesting events from lots of different sources. Yeah. So everything within the dashboard is API driven. You could build the dashboard yourself from our API, but we do also have a Terraform provider that you can manage your Hookdeck resources with. So the credentials are down to a project level. So you could feed in a different API secret and then replicate that setup with different variables injected into your Terraform provider and create and replicate that setup across those different projects. So as I mentioned, dev, staging, prod, whatever environments you want, and integrate into your CI/CD workflows as well.
Nice.
So that's the basic demo. I mean, the next thing would be to kind of show the error workflow and then the PagerDuty integration.
Yeah, let's see how it integrates with PagerDuty. Like a lot of this stuff is interesting. Is like we talk to a lot of folks who are they have a lot of events. They have a lot of stuff coming from, like you say, a lot of different sources, and everyone has their own schema for the information and the data that they're emitting in an event. And it doesn't all translate into exactly what PagerDuty wants in an event to find useful and sort of match our schema. So we do have lots of folks out there who might be interested in this for translating, aggregating, sort of reforming events into better language for ingestion in PagerDuty. So I think that's going to be really interesting for folks.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mentioned that Shopify is the most, by organization, is the most commonly used webhook on our platform. Interestingly enough, the most volume, per organization, the most commonly used across all organizations is GitHub. So
okay.
People in the ops world are using us. The volume isn't that high, obviously, but and our pricing is very much around volume. So it's a great tool to use to use within your GitOps workflows, and as you say,
yes,
you could just general operations that you can be transforming between different payloads. So I thought about using PagerDuty webhooks for this, but I thought I could get into some sort of vicious cycle if I've got incidents causing trigger. So So I didn't do that for now. I thought Shopify is the most common one. Yeah. But as you were seeing on these connections, these ones are listed at the top, kind of around the most common ones we have. But there are quite a lot of providers in there, and all of them have authentication in different ways. But we provide specific support for those as well, and also handshakes. We don't list the handshake. When you submit a webhook URL to be registered, often there's a request that comes out from the provider, but we provide native support to make sure we adhere to that handshake.
Oh, okay, yeah.
As well, so we've done some stuff like that as well.
Yeah, we have had questions in the past from our forums with that problem, because we aren't able to support that in our webhook setup right now. So yeah, a PagerDuty incident can trigger an outbound webhook, but that functionality isn't as robust as what you guys have. So we have had folks ask us about, hey, can you do this sort of initial handshake, prove where you're coming from, that sort of, and
Right.
we're not able to do that part.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully we'll have some. Maybe have some common customers that we're just not aware of at the
Absolutely.
moment.
I know we'll have this in our back pocket now for folks who ask us those questions. Definitely.
Fantastic. Yeah. Okay. So we saw this issue being triggered when the payload was incorrect for the Vonage API, and we have 3 types of issues. So something's gone wrong within your Hookdeck infrastructure that you've configured. Those are the delivery types that we've seen. So unable to deliver that payload to the endpoint. The attempt to deliver has failed. Transformations. So we looked at that transformation, that JavaScript function. I'll be honest, sometimes I save things without fully running them. So you obviously want to know if those transformations fail. The interesting, I mentioned it's all API driven, so obviously you can put unit tests around your transformations and deploy them via CI/CD. So that should never happen. But if you do use the UI, you can click test, but sometimes you might accidentally save with an error in there, or there's an edge case you haven't thought about. So anyway, you can be notified about those transformation issues and back pressure. So we ingest events for our customers, at scale. We don't say no to any events unless they don't adhere to some certain payload content types we don't support. But we just ingest those, push them into the queue. But customers obviously have a plan with us. We will deliver at a throughput based on their plan. But if they're going over that throughput, they need to know that something's happened. So obviously we'll email them, but there's also a specific issue for that they should probably change their throughput, and they're not receiving these events at the rate at which they're being sent to us, so that they need to know about that. So those are the 3 issue types. And we've got an example here. Now, this, I think we've done quite a good job of building this, quite a common workflow, quite similar to PagerDuty. We've called them issues instead of incidents. But that's great, but it's only Hookdeck. And I'm absolutely certain that any organization that has an ops team or is building anything in production will want to centralize their management of these incidents. So obviously the PagerDuty integration makes a ton of sense. So what it does require our integrations do require someone to be on a team plan. The team plan is, I can't remember now, $29 or $30. I think it's $39. But it's not. If you are a team, it's not expensive.
Right. Sure.
But to have that integration, you do need that. So to enable this, I go into settings. I go to integrations, and I click on connect for PagerDuty. I'm going to log in as Alex here. He's shared his credentials with me by 1Password, I'll say. And then I can select the services that I want this integration to run on within PagerDuty. I'm going to connect to something called Hookdeck Prod in there as well. So what that first layer of authentication has done is allow us to use the API to create incidents. Then we have a second auth flow, which allows us to subscribe to incident webhooks from PagerDuty.
Okay.
So that we can have bidirectional synchronization of Hookdeck issues with PagerDuty. So I'll authorize that. I think we've got a little bit ahead of ourselves here, and said we can filter on different issue types, but we haven't implemented that yet. It just so let's pretend this box didn't appear. So we just confirm I want all issue types. So that's integrated. Now, if we trigger an incident, so now I'll need to just write some code that doesn't work and try and get past the fact that type checking and linting really doesn't let you do anything now. So if I say console.log request.body as any dot some value, which will be undefined, and then try and access a property on that. Something else. But it hasn't corrected me on that. Oh, I think I occasionally get this where Prettier wants to. Right, okay. That should definitely be erroring for me in my tests. So that I've got I think I'm going to close my editor. Again, I'll open up another one. I see, the demo gods have not been good to me. New window. So then I'll close this. Don't save. And open that again. I find that Prettier sometimes hangs on me. And
oh, yeah.
yeah. So that's what I was expecting. Okay, so we're obviously not allowed that. And I'm going to ask Copilot to it's obviously very bad, and I'm sure no developer would ever do this. So I'm just ignoring that. Then, so this is going to throw an error, and I can deploy that. So hopefully this is quick. And then what I want to do is kind of just go through the workflow that you might follow when doing this. So I had a simpler backend application initially that built a lot quicker, but I think as soon as I added the Next.js component, it means there's much more to build.
Oh, okay.
Come on, please be quick. Let me get my okay, great. I need to update my Vercel CLI. Okay, so now if I trigger this event over here,
yeah.
I've just totally lost my screen now. Where's my console? There we go. Oh, actually, my connection's been refused. I'm gonna have to. So the CLI is a development tool. It's not a production tool. So what I'll do is I'll trigger that again. Just so we can see. Oh no, not that. No, not that. There we go. Trigger. That's definitely trigger. Oh, that's still not connected.
No.
I'll tell you what. Let me just jump into here. So we've got issues.
Definitely sometimes. Yeah.
Definitely got issues. Yeah. So my CLI isn't connecting for some reason, but we can see the Shopify prod endpoint has got a 500 error, which is expected because we're trying to access a property on an undefined variable. So now if I go into, I'll need to log into PagerDuty. It's Alex again. Okay, so I've got one issue, which is great because I was expecting two here because the CLI was meant to be connected. The CLI is not connected, so it's only triggered an issue and therefore created an incident within PagerDuty for the Shopify prod connection, which is expected, which is great. So what I'm going to do now, okay, what would the workflow be? Right, great. I'm aware that something's there. I'm going to acknowledge it. What I didn't show over here was, it was there. So now it's moved into acknowledged.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So that's synchronized. As we're fixing this, let's say we've got a whole bunch of more events coming in, which we don't want to hit that endpoint anymore. So what we can do is go into connections. I can go to my Shopify prod connection and I can pause it. So we'll be ingesting the events library from the source, but we'll be queuing them for delivery later when we fixed whatever's going on in the Shopify prod destination. So now I can fix the code, speak to the developer. Hey, you shouldn't be pushing code like that to me. I shouldn't be pushing code like that to production. I can now push that to production. I'd like to see whether I can get my CLI to connect as well. Right, there we go. Okay. And I'm going to trigger another event just to make sure that comes through. Yeah. Oh no, so it's still. I wonder whether, I don't know what's, oh, I've killed my server.
Oh dear. Oh no.
Yeah, so that's what's up.
Yeah, so connection refused. Yes, that's right. My dev server is not running. So that was it. So it was connecting to Hookdeck, but it wasn't connecting to my local host because it wasn't running, which is fair enough. So that's deployed now. So what I probably do here, so now we can see that, oh, okay, that's an older one that I didn't acknowledge, isn't it? We've got these acknowledged over here. Back in PagerDuty, right, I push my fix. I don't know what the workflow would be actually, but my assumption would be I'm going to leave it to acknowledged until I've seen that it's definitely working.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'll do is I'll go back into my connections and I will unpause
that connection, which will allow those queued events, which I've probably, yeah, so you can see they're paused. So given a little bit of time, they should, so I can actually manually, it's done it. So they were queued, they've been sent. What could happen in those scenarios as well is that, say it's, I mean, that obviously fix that very quickly. It's a simple fix. But if it's something that takes days, now even with a good retry, like exponential retry over days, that's going to time out and those will fail. So what you can do is you can select events that have failed in this histogram, click apply, and then bulk retry the events that have failed.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So you can do that manually, or you can do it programmatically. You can you can query the API, find the events that have failed, and then use the retry endpoint within Hookdeck to trigger that. So you can completely avoid any manual process as well, and completely integrate it into your ops workflow. So now I've seen those have been successfully delivered. I'm going to go into PagerDuty and I'm going to say I've now resolved that. I'm sure I'd provide some useful information there. And then back in Hookdeck, the issues are now resolved. So, I mean, there was obviously something going on with my environment that I wasn't aware of, but, but everything still worked. So, yeah. So that's it. And it is, genuinely simple as that. The two-way integrations there. As I said, I think the value is that it obviously integrates with all your other incident workflow management. And some things maybe will be tied together that this gives you full visibility on by being within PagerDuty.
Absolutely. Yeah. It makes it, like we were talking about before, like that's a lot more sophisticated than some of the other things we see folks do and trying to post things together and reroute and do whatever. There's a lot of munging that goes on for events as they're being emitted from different places. So
nice. I mean, a lot of our customers still manage things through the UI.
Yeah.
But I think there's so much power there that if you can, fully automate the setup of this, that thing where you go, I spent all this time setting something up, and if I lose it for some reason,
now what?
I can't re-automate it. But you can, as I said, with Terraform or just with scripts, if you want to set all this infrastructure up, make it repeatable quite easily, manage these workflows, automate those things. So a lot of, I think, opportunity here for people to play with and bring some value to their business or just have fun with.
Yeah, awesome. I'm going to post some links in the chat for folks. If you want to sign up to try Hookdeck, you can do that. What's a good thing that you see folks do with as a first project? What do you see them get started with when they start using Hookdeck?
Yeah, I mean, the common one is the inbound webhooks. It's so even more so now. Webhooks are ubiquitous for an event happens on a platform and you want to do that. It's Shopify, it's Stripe, it's like it is ops workflow. As I said, we don't have GitHub here, but GitHub is a big one to plug into your ops workflow to do other things. So it's nice that you can go, okay, I'm just going to build something locally, receive my event, make sure your dev server's running, and then build something out, and then just go, okay, this is working locally. I can push it. And I can add another destination to my connection, and then I've got that working, so that I've gone from dev to prod. You're not building, you're just building a side project or just trying something out. It makes that really, really easy, and you get that visibility across from the inbound request through to the destination interaction all in one place. So I think that's the receiving webhooks is a really common one.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's been great. I learned a lot. This is not something that I interact with a lot, so it's always interesting to see what's going on this side of the house. So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, cool, fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I'll send you links to the docs. I've got the code. I mean, it's very simple, the code that I've got, but obviously there's some scripts there to allow people to kind of play with things and a little bit of a walkthrough of just the demo that I went through. So that might be quite useful if people just want to kind of read that walkthrough that we went through as well.
Yeah, awesome. So let me see. I'm going to post the integration documentation as well for folks.
Yes. Yeah.
If you want to integrate your Hookdeck with your PagerDuty, the docs are there to do that as well.
I mean, as you saw, it's click.
Off it goes. Yeah.
But yeah, there are docs that confirm the workflow you need to go through.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Phil, this has been great. It's super exciting. So love to see how folks are integrating and expanding the all the resources and things that we can do with all the products. So
yeah, I'd love to get people's feedback. Are there use cases we've not thought of? It's a very very powerful platform that allows all sorts of things. We started as really just inbound webhooks, which is why I focused there. But one of the reasons we've kind of repositioned without changing the functionality as this event gateway is because developers were using us to send events, connect services.
Sure.
And that was like, okay, we didn't build for that, but yes, that's right. This platform does allow for that. So I'm sure there's other ideas out there that I'd love to hear.
Awesome. All right. Well, I posted the Hookdeck social media accounts on the chat as well. If you are viewing this later in YouTube, all that stuff is down below in the show notes. And where can folks find you personally if they want to know more or get in touch with you?
Sure. Search my surname, Leggetter, Leggetter. That's me on X. It's me on Blue Sky, westleggetter.co.uk on Blue Sky. LinkedIn, it's /Leggetter. GitHub, it's /Leggetter. So there are other people with the name Leggetter, but
you have cornered the market though
exactly.
in technical social media.
Yeah, it wasn't that difficult in all fairness. There aren't that many people with the name Leggetter.
Excellent. All right. Well, it's been fantastic. So folks like out there, if you do try this out and you want to give us a shout or let us know how it went, you can post on our community forums. You can get in touch with Hookdeck, get in touch with Phil. We love to hear these success stories when folks are using integrations and combining up all these things into interesting workflows. So if it's a need that you have and it works out, like let us know so we can give you a shout out. So Phil, it's been great. Thank you so much for coming on the stream with us today. Hopefully this will find some folks that are doing interesting and funny things with this. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Mandy, and thanks, PagerDuty. Very much appreciate the opportunity. And have a great day.
Yeah, everybody else out there, we'll be back online in a couple of weeks with more streams. In the meantime, we'll wish you an uneventful day, and we'll talk to you later.